Hey, Freedom Flickers. Welcome back to the channel where we shine a light on truth, liberty, and what's really going down. Today, we're diving into a massive story out of Washington, D.C., where thousands of people hit the streets on September 6th, 2025, to protest what's being called President Donald Trump's takeover of the nation's capital. This wasn't just a march. It was a bold stand against federal overreach, militarized policing, and a whole lot more. So what's really going on? Why are people so fired up? And what does this mean for freedom in America? Buckle up because we're breaking it all down in this 30-minute deep dive. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and let's get into it. All right, let's start with the basics. On September 6th, 2025, thousands of people marched from Malcolm X Park, also known as Meridian Hill Park, to Freedom Plaza and Lafayette Park, right near the White House. This wasn't a small gathering. Reports from outlets like The Hill and NBC News say the crowd was massive, with some calling it one of the biggest protests against President Trump's recent moves in D.C. The march, called We Are All D.C., was organized by groups like Free D.C., the American Civil Liberties Union, and local advocates for D.C. Home Rule. Their message? A loud and clear rejection of what they see as Trump's federal takeover of the city's policing. But what exactly does that mean? Back in August 2025, President Trump invoked a section of the D.C. Home Rule Act, declaring a crime emergency in Washington. This executive order gave his administration temporary control over the Metropolitan Police Department for 30 days, set to expire on September 10th. He also deployed hundreds of National Guard troops from states like West Virginia, South Carolina, and Ohio to patrol D.C. streets, alongside federal agents from IC and the FBI. Trump justified this by saying he's taking the capital back from crime and homelessness. But here's where it gets dicey. City officials, including D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser, have pointed out that violent crime in D.C. is actually lower now than during Trump's first term. So, why the heavy-handed response? Protesters say it's less about crime and more about political control, especially since D.C.'s unique status as a federal district means it's vulnerable to this kind of federal overreach. Let's take a step back. Why does this matter? For one, D.C. isn't just a city. It's home to over 700,000 people who don't have the same rights as other Americans. No voting representation in Congress, no full control over their own governance. And now, with armed National Guard troops patrolling their neighborhoods, many residents feel like they're living in a militarized zone. That's what sparked this massive march. So, what were the people in the streets saying? This wasn't just a random crowd. These were D.C. residents, activists, and allies from all walks of life. United under the banner, We Are All D.C., they carried signs reading End the D.C. occupation and No Troops in D.C., and they chanted messages of resistance. One group, Free D.C., put it powerfully. D.C. communities are joyful, powerful, and we're under attack. Armed National Guard soldiers are carrying guns through our neighborhoods. ICE and FBI agents are profiling, harassing, and violently arresting our neighbors. The protesters had clear demands: an immediate end to the federal takeover, the withdrawal of National Guard troops, and, here's a big one, statehood for D.C. For years, D.C. residents have been pushing for statehood to gain the same rights as other Americans, including a voice in Congress. One protester, Ty Hobson Powell from the Long Live Go-Go Foundation, told WUSA 9, D.C. deserves to have a right to speak to its own issues. We are surrounded by a democracy we can't participate in. Another voice from the League of Conservation Voters said on X, Our nation's capital is a place people call home, not a militarized zone. We're demanding an end to Trump's takeover of D.C. and calling on Congress to finally give D.C. the statehood it's owed. But it's not just about D.C. statehood. Protesters also raised concerns about who's being targeted. Groups like the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network pointed out that federal agents are focusing on Black, brown, immigrant, and unhoused communities, with traffic stops and detentions that many call discriminatory. One statement from Democracy Forward on X summed it up: We will not bow to dictators. We are in solidarity with our neighbors in Black, brown, immigrant, and other communities targeted. This is personal for a lot of people. Imagine waking up to see armed soldiers in your neighborhood, federal agents setting up checkpoints, and local police under federal control. That's the reality for D.C. residents right now, and it's why thousands took to the streets. Now, let's look at the other side. Why is the Trump administration doing this? According to the president, it's all about cracking down on crime and homelessness in D.C. Trump has repeatedly called D.C. one of the most dangerous cities in the world, pointing to incidents like the attack on a former DOJ staffer near U Street on August 3, 2025, as evidence. His executive order in August declared a crime emergency, giving his administration control over the D.C. police and bringing in National Guard troops to restore order. Some of Trump's supporters argue this is necessary. They say D.C.'s crime, while lower than in past years, still needs a strong response, and the federal government has a responsibility to step in since D.C. isn't a state. Republican leaders like Kentucky Representative James Comer, who chairs the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, have backed Trump's moves, saying they're working to make D.C. safe again. Comer's committee is even pushing bills to tighten federal control over the city, including tougher criminal sentences and efforts to beautify D.C. by removing graffiti and restoring monuments. But here's where we need to dig deeper. City officials, including D.C.'s Attorney General Brian Schwalb, have pushed back hard. Schwalb filed a lawsuit that stopped the Trump administration from appointing an emergency police commissioner to take over the D.C. police, calling it a hostile takeover. And the data? It shows violent crime in D.C. is actually down compared to Trump's first term. So, is this really about crime, or is it a political move to flex federal power over a city that leans heavily Democratic? This isn't the first time Trump has used federal forces in D.C. Back in 2020, during the George Floyd protests, federal agents and National Guard troops were deployed to control demonstrations, sparking similar outrage. Critics say this is a pattern, using D.C.'s unique status as a federal district to push a tough-on-crime agenda that could spread to other cities. So what's really at stake here? This protest isn't just about National Guard troops or federal agents. It's about who gets to control D.C. and, by extension, what kind of precedent this sets for the rest of the country. D.C.'s lack of statehood means it's uniquely vulnerable to federal overreach. Unlike states, D.C. can't fully govern itself, and Congress can override its laws. That's why protesters are chanting "Free D.C." and pushing for statehood. As D.C. Councilmember Robert White put it, D.C. as a state means 2 Democratic senators and a Democrat in the House protecting democracy. But it's not just about D.C. If the federal government can take over policing in one city, what's stopping it from doing the same elsewhere? Trump already deployed the National Guard to Los Angeles earlier in 2025 to crack down on protests and immigration issues. Protesters worry this could become a blueprint for other cities, especially those with progressive leadership or diverse populations. And then there's the human cost. Protesters say federal agents are targeting vulnerable communities, Black, brown, immigrant, and unhoused people, creating fear and division. One activist told NPR, "The most concerning thing about it is there's been no check and balance of the systems of power." That's a big deal in a democracy, right? When power goes unchecked, it's not just D.C. residents who feel the impact. It's all of us. As of now, Trump's temporary takeover of the D.C. police is set to expire on September 10th, 2025, unless Congress extends it. Reports say Republicans have no plans to do so, but they're still pushing bills to increase federal control over the city. So, the fight's not over. All right, freedom flickers. That's the story of the massive D.C. protest against Trump's federal takeover. Thousands of people stood up for their city, their rights, and their vision of a free and fair America. But this isn't just a D.C. story. It's a wake-up call for all of us. What happens when the federal government can swoop in and take control of a city's police? What does it mean for democracy when one group feels targeted while another feels protected? Here's what you can do. First, stay informed. Check out the sources we've referenced. Links in the description. Second, let your voice be heard. Whether it's through peaceful protest, voting, or just talking to your friends and family, Every action counts. And third, if you're as passionate about freedom as we are, hit that subscribe button, join the Freedom Flicker community, and let's keep shining a light on these stories. What do you think about the DC protests? Are they a stand for democracy? Or is Trump right to crack down? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to see more deep dives like this, give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Next week, we're tackling T's next topic, e.g., another big story shaking up the nation. Until then, keep the flame of freedom burning. This is Freedom Flicker, and I'll see you in the next one.